Hey guys, Alex with TDM Cigars on behalf of the Cigar Table. Um, we filmed our initial podcast slash YouTube video, and we posted that with multiple cameras. And unfortunately, one of the cameras did not catch, which is this one right above me. It is the rolling camera. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties. Again, we're brand new, so we're still learning. And I wanted to go ahead and show a recap video just to show you the top 3 rolling styles that are primarily used inside of a factory. Now, although there are tons of different rolling styles, these are the top 3 that are usually found inside of a factory. In front of me, as you can see, I actually have a double binder. There are 2 different types of binder. I have a Brazilian and a Dominican binder here. They're not actually just solely for structural purposes, but they are in fact for their flavor and aroma profiles. Now, we talked about in that video the 3 most basic types of tobacco, which is your seco, which we have here. I have a nice Indonesian seco. We have our viso from Esteli, Nicaragua. And then we have a Criollo 98 Ligero, again from Nicaragua. These tobaccos have been cased, so they're a little bit more pliable. The unfortunate part is, because of this, I can't really smoke one right off the table because it won't smoke right. They'll actually have to be dry boxed for a little bit. However, it will give me a more consistent product. So when we talked about that video, the basic types of tobacco. Now, volado was the bottom of the leaf, which is very rarely used. Some factories do, but this is seco. As you can see, it's very, very thin. It's actually the oldest leaf. This is used for a little bit of its aroma, but mostly for some structure and for the burning capabilities, right? So it has this burns really, really well. It's usually pretty dry. It also doesn't really, it's the oldest, like I said. It doesn't really give that much flavor, but nothing that we do for a cigar is benign. Just remember that. Then your next step up is your viso. It's a little bit thicker, right? You have a nice thicker vein. Again, when we showed you the previous video, some places take this middle vein out, some places leave it in. I like to leave it in because this is not only offers some structure for the actual cigar, but this is where a lot of your flavor and your nicotine is. Now remember, this comes directly from the plant. All the nutrients and everything filter out directly through this central vein. So I like to keep mine. That's just a personal preference. Now, if I'm using like a Habano Ligero from like Jalapa, that central vein is super thick. And if I want to control the amount of nicotine and flavor that I'm giving, sometimes I'll remove some of it, but I may place little pieces of it. And here you have your Ligero. As you can see, it's thick, it's leathery. It's actually the youngest, other than the Medio Tiempo, of the plant. And we're going to go ahead and utilize this for our blend. All right, but I'm going to show you the basic 3 rolling styles. We're going to start off with the Entubado method, which is predominantly Cuban. That's where it was developed. And I'll show you how we go about that. These leaves are pretty big. Now, understand that when you buy filler tobacco, it's not going to be the best. All right, you're going to see some with holes. You might see like a half leaf here, half leaf there. Again, it is filler tobacco. Nothing really goes to waste. But I wanted to show you, this is Indonesian Sumatra Seco. Has a wonderful musky flavor and aroma, which is part of the blend that I'm using here. As you can see, it's a very large, very large leaf here. So for the Entubado method, for this particular leaf, what I do is I just fold this one in half, all right? And I'm gonna use this as a cradle. And then what I can go ahead and use is the rest of the broken seco, right? Because again, it doesn't have to be picture perfect. I just need to make sure that I fill in all the gaps. So just remember, there's a little bit of a gap here, and then we can go ahead and take care of that when we do the final roll. Take a little piece here. Now I have my viso, and we're gonna go ahead and tube that down. All right, entuado literally means tube. Now, the one thing I do like about the Entubado method is you get a pretty good airflow. Again, because if you see here, you can see the small tubes and chambers on the top of the leaves here. So it does create a good airflow. The unfortunate part is it takes a lot of practice to really master, because if you don't master this roll, then you're going to have issues with the airflow. It's the easiest to screw up. All right, so now I have the basic part of the roll here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my tips, I'm gonna stagger them throughout, and that's gonna give me little changes in flavor. Now remember how we had a little bit of an issue earlier, and when you roll it, you're gonna feel it in your hands, and you're gonna see whether or not it's consistent. All right, now that I filled this up, now as you can see, again, this is my interpretation of this. This is going to be a left-handed cigar. Why? Because this is going towards the right and I'm rolling towards my left, okay? Some people will say, well, if it's a left-handed cigar, that means you're rolling with your left. Again, this is my interpretation, all right? And the cool thing about the cigar industry is a lot of the stuff really is left up to interpretation, because it is as much of an art as it is a science. Now, when I roll, I'm rolling with just a little bit of pressure, right? Because although it looks a little gnarly on the outside, you want it to be as smooth as you possibly can get it. It's not going to be perfect, and that's perfectly fine. You want to take your time. Again, we're going to add a little bit of gentle pressure here. And while I'm doing this, when you're pushing down, you're actually going to feel some of the leaves crush in, and they're going to move into certain places. Now, you don't want to ram your arm down like I spoke to you in one of my previous videos, because what you're going to do is you're going to close up those little tubes, and then there's going to be no airflow, and it's going to have a very tight draw or no draw at all. So I could tell where to cut here because I purposely put the tips over here, and this is going to be slightly underfilled. So if you look at, you can see it a little bit better. And then again, we're measuring here, cutting there, and then we're gonna go unravel this just a little bit. Got my vermicle here. I'm gonna pull a little bit of tension and then do the final roll, and then that comes out pretty decent. All right. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but when I first started, the bottoms of the leaves were actually facing up, because the veins are thickest at the bottom of the leaf, and you want them facing towards the inside of the cigar. So what that does is that when you finally put the wrapper on, those veins will not protrude through a wrapper, especially if it's a thin wrapper. And I cut a little bit around the edge, because what I want this to do is, you see the rounded edges here? When I push the cigar into the mold, and then I push all the way up, that now semi-rounded edge will go ahead and fit very, very nicely inside the top of that mold. Now, if you notice some of the rolling videos that a lot of these factories put out, they have a specialized table, and that table allows them to move the scraps out of the way and keep their general work area relatively clean. Unfortunately, I don't have a rolling table in my cigar lab, but you know, you always want to make sure that you start with a nice clean surface, right? It doesn't have to be immaculate, but you want to keep everything clean. So we just did the entuado method. I'm gonna go ahead and get my double binder like I did earlier. Everything's been nicely cased, okay? Now, if you do what I do, is I tend to case my stuff overnight. Keep in mind that, you know, when you start wetting these tobacco leaves, they will in fact start to ferment almost right away, okay? because they've just gone through a fermenting process, and some of the leaves aren't done fermenting. You know, they don't all ferment at the exact same time. So if you open up the bag that which you were casing these leaves in, and you smell a little bit of ammonia, understand that that's okay. That just means the fermentation process has restarted, and you're just going to have to let these cigars rest a little bit. That way the ammonia can go ahead and get expelled out, and you don't really have to worry about it too much. All right, so there's a little tear in the binder, which is perfectly fine. If you notice the thick part, this is actually the bottom of the leaf. This is the top. This is what faces the sun. If you can see the difference here, right? So everything that's done or not done will affect the quality of your cigar. So a little extra prep work at the beginning, and yes, my God, it's horrible. It's tedious. I don't like it. I would rather just, you know, whiz through a bunch of cigars and be done with it. But the more work you do ahead of time, the better your product will be. Here's my Brazilian, which is substantially thinner. Now, if you notice, these are two opposite facing leaves. That's perfectly fine, because this leaf here will actually be going on towards the inside of the cigar. But what you want to do at a minimum, right, this, if you notice, this is a little thicker. Right here, this is the bottom of the leaf. This is where the central vein would be. What you want to do is you want to at least make sure that these veins are relatively lined up, because it will matter in the finished product. All right. So now we're going to do the book method, or the accordion method. Now again, this is seco, right? And filler tobacco is definitely not the best quality, which is why it's filler tobacco. But again, it doesn't go to waste. But for television purposes, I'm going to show you nice big leaves here. Okay. Now, if you notice, it's going to be literally like a Z pattern, right? Like a little Z fold. Now, the cool part about the booking method is it is faster. It is a lot more forgiving, but you don't create those little air channels, right? So each roll, I'm not saying one roll is better than the other, but each rolling style will solve and create its own problem, okay? And then we're gonna show you a little bit here. If you noticed, when versus the Entubado method, this version's a little bit cleaner. You notice the bunch isn't all over the place like the Entubado method. And like I said, it is inherently faster. All right, if you notice, look how pretty that is. But you really don't have those air channels like you did before. So how do we fix this? Well, this is where the placement of the tobacco, when you're putting like the tips back and all that kind of stuff, this is where this will really matter. So we're gonna make sure that we don't create any type of plugs. You don't want to overfill. The one thing that I do notice though, and it sounds weird, but I get more waste with the booking method. I mean, my scrap tobacco gets refolded into other cigars anyway, so technically nothing really goes to waste. But just I've noticed that my little scrap piles here get a little bit bigger, and they weigh roughly the same. So I don't know. There's no logic behind that one. if you notice, this little piece right here is underfilled because that's where the tips actually stop. And that's the accordion method there. A little bit of that vegetable glue. Put a little bit of tension. Round out that last part there. Push it all the way up. Beautiful. All right, now the last method, and again, there are hundreds of different rolling styles, especially when you like start talking about sub-classifications like farm rolls, that kind of a deal. You get a whole bunch of different rolling styles. This is going to be a hybrid method. Now, I've never actually seen a cigar with a hybrid method. I know some of the high-end stuff do it, only because, you know, like I said before, the accordion method is, it can block some of those air channels like, versus the entuado. Let's get a better binder here. So, again, it's just, you're gonna see in one of our upcoming videos is there a difference? Now wait until you see what I do to Jesse. I kind of messed with him a little bit. I'm not gonna tell you what I did to him, but I kind of put him to the test. He's still relatively new to the cigar industry. He's learning a lot. He's learning faster than I did, which is great. However, we kind of went over the cigars and we smoked. I blind handed him one. I was like, all right, tell me what the cigar is. And wait until you see that video, guys. It's actually pretty decent. It's pretty fun. So our goal is to bring you a video every other Thursday. Some of them will be very science-laden, because I'm a cigar nerd. And some of them will be just some chit-chat, some product reviews, that kind of a deal. All right, so here we go. So this is the hybrid method. Now, what do I mean by that? So I'm gonna make myself a nice little bed here, right? Again, this is the accordion method for here. Continue that accordion method. And then the ligero actually gets tubed. Now, why would I do that? Well, one of the issues, like we discussed before, is the accordion method tends to leave some blocked air channels, right? However, if you tube the ligero, you're going to create an air channel in the center of the cigar, right? Because the ligero is the thickest and also is the hardest to burn. So by tubing the ligero, you open your chances for a little bit of a better even burn. Go ahead, take our tips, stagger them all over the place. This cigar is a little bit shorter. Unfortunately, the binder was a little bit too small. My own error, but that's okay. Again, I'm not selling these. These are for mine and my friends' enjoyment. Probably gonna smoke this one later on today. But you see, you want it as relatively smooth as possible. And we're gonna go ahead and put this one towards the end. So, all right, guys. Well, that was just a quick excerpt on what the 3 different major rolling styles are. I'm not gonna really be putting wrappers on these right away because they still have to be pressed. However, I will be filming that, how to put a wrapper on these cigars. I'm gonna use a nice Ecuadorian Connecticut, very thin and very pliable wrapper, but it is very unforgiving. So we're gonna go ahead cut this video, and hope you guys enjoy. Again, this is Alex with TDM Cigars on behalf of the Cigar Table. Everybody have a wonderful day.